She had not expected peace to feel like waiting. 3 months since the substrate's publication, 3 months since the governance protocols had gone out across every relay and choir station and salvage transmitter the coalition could reach. A design specification for collective governance, written in the language of gods, offered freely to anyone who could read it. 3 months since Serethi Voss had stood in the seed chamber and felt the binding leave her like a tide going out, taking something she had not known she needed until it was gone. Now she stood in the rain. The rainfields of Solabri Prime stretched around her in every direction. Dark new soil, vivid grass pushing through in scattered patches. The pale blue sky streaked with thin clouds that had not existed a season ago. She was watching a beetle, a real one, engineered from the substrate's terraforming library, black-shelled and purposeful, cross a blade of new grass when the ache began. Not pain, not quite. A pressure behind her collarbone, spreading upward along the old paths of the binding scars, the veins that had gone pale and inert the day she severed the channel. She pressed her fingers to the base of her skull. The scars were cold. They were always cold now, but something was moving in them, faint as a pulse heard through stone. She did not know yet what it meant. She would know in 11 minutes. 11 minutes later, the Rethane listening post ceased to exist. 300 warships dropped out of Starfall above the blue-grey gas giant at the galaxy's edge, and the station, 3 linked cylinders, 12 analysts, 2 patrol frigates, became light. The light was brief. The debris field was not. The post's final transmission was 4 words of automated distress code and then silence. And the silence spread across the relay network at the speed of signal, reaching Kale Thyros's communications terminal on Lysara's flagship before it reached Serethi, still standing in the rain. Kyle heard it first. He was at his console when the alert came through, the surgical scar along his right temple catching the blue light of the display, his prosthetic left hand already moving across the keys before the tone finished. He pulled the transmission logs. He pulled the hull signature data from the debris field analysis. He looked at what the debris field contained and sat very still for 4 seconds, which was a long time for Kyle. Then he opened a channel to Vaylin Drace. Vaylin was teaching. He was always teaching now. The classroom on Solabri Prime's surface had no roof on one side. The wall had been left open deliberately, so the students could look out at the world their language was helping maintain. He was at the chalkboard, ink-stained fingers moving through a phonetic chart, when Kale's voice came through the small speaker clipped to his robe. He listened. He did not speak for a moment. Then he said, "Play it again." Kale played it again. The demand broadcast was 17 seconds long. It had been transmitted on every open frequency simultaneously, aimed at the coalition's known relay nodes, and it spoke in a dialect of progenitor that Vaylin Drace had never heard. He knew the grammar. He knew the phonemes. He did not know this tongue. It was older. It was the same language the way a river is the same water, recognizable in structure, unrecognizable in source. He translated it slowly, phrase by phrase, his fingers moving on invisible surfaces, his dark eyes moving back and forth across something only he could see. And then he stopped. He said Kale's name quietly. He said, "It is addressing her by the Solabri designation, the lineage name, the one erased from every official record 12 centuries ago." Kale said, "I know. I need you to tell me what the rest of it says." Vaylin told him. The rest of it said, "Every world sustained by chorus voices will be silenced, one by one, until the last Solabri heir presents herself and surrenders the complete governance substrate. Not the published version, the complete version, including the revocation clause. The thing that made power provisional, the thing they had fought an entire war to give the galaxy." Serethi was still in the rainfields when Kyle reached her. He came on foot from the surface access point, moving fast, his too well-tailored coat already soaked through, and she saw his face before he spoke and understood that something had broken. He told her everything. She listened without moving. The rain continued. Her scars continued to ache. When he finished, she looked down at her left forearm. The chemical burn scars, the old ones, the ones that had nothing to do with progenitors. And then at the pale veins of the binding scars along her neck. And she pressed her palm flat to the dark soil beneath her feet. She felt it. Faint, intermittent, the way a heartbeat sounds heard through a wall. The seed below her, recognizing something in her hand. Not the binding, that was gone, something older, something the seed had been built to respond to before the binding was invented. Her bloodline, her name. She stood up. She said, "Call the assembly." The assembly was chaos. It had been chaos for 3 months, but it was a different kind of chaos now. The procedural kind, the kind that forms when 14 worlds with 14 different histories try to govern by consensus for the first time. The Coalition Assembly Hall smelled of new earth and old metal, and the particular tension of people who are trying very hard to follow rules they wrote themselves. Representatives argued over whether the substrate's decision threshold applied to military responses, whether a fleet action required unanimous consent or a 2/3 majority, whether the Rethane post's destruction constituted an act of war against the coalition or against the post's specific signatories. Halia Vaughan stood at the stone table with her prosthetic stump resting on its surface and her good ear turned toward the speaker feeds. And she listened to the arguments with the expression of someone who has been patient for a very long time and is approaching the end of it. Lysara Ethonis stood at the back of the room near the communication terminals, her star map mantle displaying the Death World resonance data. 14 worlds, 14 pulsing lights, all of them still blue-white. And she said nothing, because the substrate said she had no more authority than anyone else in this room, and she had accepted that, and she was finding it extremely difficult. Vex Karen had sent her analysis to every terminal in the room before the session opened. The hull signatures were pre-war progenitor construction. The dialect was pre-codex. The fleet was not a house military. It was not the compact. It was something that had not existed in any intelligence file the Coalition possessed, and it had just destroyed a listening post in under 90 seconds with weapons that should not be functional. The arguments continued. Serethi walked in. She was still wet from the rain. She had not changed. She stood in the center of the room, not at the table, not at the speaker's position, just in the center, and she waited until the room was quiet. Then she said the name. Not her name. The name the broadcast had spoken, the Solabri lineage designation. The name that was punishable by death in certain systems. She said it clearly, in the middle of the Coalition Assembly Hall, on the surface of the world that had been Solabri Prime before the War of Nine Suns erased it. The room was very quiet. She said, "They know what I am. They knew before I did. They have known for longer than any of us have been alive, because they were there when the name was made, and they left the galaxy rather than accept what my ancestors built into the substrate, the part that lets it end. The revocation clause. They do not want the published substrate. They want the complete one, the one that can dissolve itself, because if they hold that, they can ensure it never does." She looked at the room. She said, "I am not asking for authority. The substrate does not give me authority. It gives us a threshold, a number of voices that have to agree before a decision executes. I am one voice. I am telling you what I know. What I know is that they will begin silencing chorus-sustained worlds, not all at once, one at a time, slowly enough that we will keep arguing about procedure while people die." She paused. She said, I have felt their signal in my scars since before the post was destroyed. Whatever is aboard those ships, whatever is speaking in a tongue older than the Codex, it already knows where I am. It is not waiting for me to decide. It is waiting for all of you." The threshold vote took 6 minutes. It was not unanimous. It was not 2/3. It was 11 of 14, which was what the substrate required for military authorization, and it carried. And the room did not cheer because the people in it understood what they had just agreed to. Halia Vaughan was the 11th vote. She cast it without hesitation and then looked at Serethi across the stone table and said nothing, because nothing needed saying. Lysara was already moving toward the communication terminals before the count finished. Kyle was already back on the flagship, his prosthetic hand on the controls, pulling up fleet disposition data. Valen was still in the classroom. He had not come to the assembly. He was at the surviving section of the chalkboard, chalk in hand, writing the broadcast's words out phoneme by phoneme, annotating them in 3 different translation frameworks, trying to find the seam where this dialect diverged from the one he knew. Ren Solari was beside him, watching, the amber flecks in his dark eyes catching the chalk dust light. Valen wrote the lineage designation in the center of the board and circled it. He said, "This word is 12 centuries old. It was spoken by people who built the substrate and then watched it erased. It has not been used in official progenitor operational language since before the War of 9 Suns." He looked at Ren. He said, "Whatever is speaking, it remembers a galaxy we have never seen." Ren looked at the word on the board. He looked at the rain through the open wall. He said, "Does it remember it accurately?" Valen put down the chalk. He said, "That is the right question." And in the hold of the Reclaimer flagship Permanence, 300 ships deep into coalition space, Admiral Soraya Kess stood before the amber-glowing crystalline shard pinned at her throat and waited for the answer she had already decided to enforce. Serethi did not go back to the assembly hall after the vote. She went back to the rainfields. The sky was darkening toward evening, the pale blue going to indigo, the seeds' glow beginning to press through the soil as the surface light faded. The geometric seams of the buried terraforming engine, blue-white light visible through the dark earth like the memory of a river. She walked to the center of the glyph. She knelt. She pressed both palms flat to the soil, the chemical burn scars on her left forearm, the pale, inert veins of the binding scars on her neck, all of it touching the dark earth of the world that had been a grave and was now a garden. She felt the seeds pulse, faint, intermittent, heard through stone, recognition without binding, bloodline without authority. The scars remembered what she had burned away. They could not reach the progenitor network. They could not interface, could not command, could not bind again. But they could feel. And what they felt, pressing through the soil from 300 warships at the galaxy's edge, was something that had been waiting 12 centuries to be answered. She did not answer it. She stayed kneeling in the rain, in the dark, on the soil of a world that should not exist, and she let the scars ache. Above her, on the flagship's bridge, Lysera Ethenis pressed her trembling right hand flat against the command console and watched 14 points of blue-white light on the resonance display, each one a world sustained by human voices speaking an ancient language they had learned in 3 months, and she began calculating how long they had before the first one went dark. The scars remembered. The question now was whether the galaxy would remember in time.